La belle époque, oh oh. La belle époque.
Hi everybody, welcome to this week's video. Kind of another montage because we had a great week this week doing the retreat. And at the end is a video I've done with Debra Morrison, who used to be my financial advisor when I was in New Jersey. And she did a great video for her Facebook Live. So I thought I would share it here just because, yeah, it was a really great interview. So I thought some of you might be interested. It's a little bit long, so don't feel bad if you don't want to stick with it. But anyway, enjoy the video. See you next week.
This is as good a day as any to start the rebuilding of life. The roads that lay open are many when the old one's gone under the knife. And I can feel the sun on my skin, beginning to thaw from within. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today is a good day to live. This morning has so clear a light as any to see the horizon in the far. Excuses were 2 for a penny, but they've all gone out the window of this car. And when I feel the wind on my face, all that ever was is a wreck. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today, well, something's gotta give. Today is a good day. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today, well, something's gotta give. Today is a good day. Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. It's a good day today.
Good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the world you are, welcome. I am Debra Morrison, the visionary for the We Can Do It Women Movement, and I am so delighted to have with me today Abby Carter, my dear friend and former client. Abby, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Indeed. Well, we have interviewed a number of very, very influential women on our Thursday series, and Abby is absolutely one of those women. And we happen to be sitting in France. Yes, Agen, France, in Abby's chateau. OMG, Abby. Tell us about the chateau.
Well, I guess you could say it was a bit of a whim. I had made this decision at some point I thought it'd be fun to just look at chateaus in France as a way of visiting France. With the hope that maybe I would find something fun. And I had many years ago, as you know from our past, that I had this idea of hosting retreats. At the time, because I was relatively newly widowed, I thought they would be retreats for widowed people.
Yes.
Sort of healing retreats. And I actually bought a property near Seattle, which is where I was living at the time, and with the intention of doing retreats. And certainly we had a few very small retreats there, but nothing to the scale that I had envisioned. So during the pandemic, I wound up selling that house. And I think during the pandemic, I just kind of got this, as so many of us did, this itch to travel. And I started watching YouTube channels about other people who had bought chateaus in France, and realized that, for honestly about half the cost that I had just sold a house for, I could buy an entire chateau in France. So suddenly the idea came back to me about having retreats, and by this point I had kind of gone less in a healing widow kind of direction and more in a sort of creative one. So the idea of having creative retreats was born, and then I found this place and it was perfect.
It is nothing short of perfect, I might add. And we're going to rewind a little bit, because if you don't know Abby's story, she was widowed when she lost her beloved husband, Aaron, in Windows of the World during the 9/11 terrorist attacks. And Abby had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. 6-year-old.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
2-year-old boy and a 6-year-old girl, and was widowed like that. I met Abby because we had reached out to the community in the firm. I was then a partner, and offered pro bono financial planning and asset management for a year. And we developed a very, very profound bond, and I with her children. And my heart was broken as it was with each of the people with whom I worked. And yet I just always cottoned to Abby. She was so real. I had a sense through Abby's tenacity and her strength during that horrendous and horrific period of time, kind of who Aaron was, right? I got to know Aaron a little bit because you would speak of him, and it felt like that knowing, if you will, and the intuition of knowing Aaron, and of course then the magnificent hole in Abby's life and that of her kids is still a hole. And yet I want to invite Abby to walk us through as much as you're comfortable with in terms of the transformation that happened. Yes, there's this automatic pilot, this need to put one foot in front of the other, especially as a mother. And yet Abby maintained this strength. It was an unflappable nature. It was unflappable. Because I had other clients that were survivors of the tragedy, and Abby's unflappable nature and certainly her dedication to her kids was unmatched. And so, Abby, talk to us about that, the acceptance. Okay, for a day or two you weren't necessarily sure, there was still hope, and then there wasn't hope. So talk to us about that sign, because you had mentioned some of that before, and I found it very interesting.
I guess it was just a few days after 9/11 had happened. We were still thinking, you know, it took me actually a long time to realize, you know, that it was a terrorist attack. I don't know, somehow in all of it, you know, your head goes a little cuckoo. And I had this idea that it was like an earthquake or, you know, a natural occurrence somehow. So we were sort of thinking air pockets and that kind of thing. So we really didn't know if you know, if they were alive or they were dead or people were going to be found or whatever. And I just had this very, you know, it was 4 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't sleep, and I had this very visceral, I was trying to remember every part of his body, and I was sort of in my mind imagining, sort of, you know, putting my hands down, you know, remembering how his ear felt, remembering how his bicep felt, you know. And all of a sudden outside my door, the hall light came on, and it was those weird push button lights, old-fashioned light switches. And I thought at first it might have been my brother. You know, at this point the house was filled with people. And so I thought he might have been coming home late at night. But I went out and there was no sign of him. I looked in at my daughter, and she was, you know, clearly had not been up. She was all spread eagled. Yeah. I looked in on my son, who still slept in a crib, so he hadn't gotten up. And I just had this moment where I was turning off the light, and as I pushed the, you know, it was a push button, as I pushed that button, and it made such a resounding click, I just thought, oh, right, you're dead. Like, you're telling me you're dead. The fact that this light had come on, and now I'm turning it off. It was just this very visceral sense that he was giving me a sign that he was, you know, to stop wondering. So that was really, you know, I mean, I'd already kind of in my heart knew, you know, because I'm a very logical person, and so I had already done all the math. Like, you know, he was on the 106th floor, the buildings fell in 102 minutes, as it turned out. You know, there was just no way that they would have made it out. So I was already very sort of pragmatic about that, but this for me was sort of the final, like, okay, got it.
And Aaron's message, and Abby's had many messages from Aaron that come in different forms, and yet her intuition and openness to always be expanding and learning, curiosity, has allowed her to receive so many wonderful messages. And I do believe that the veil between here and there is gossamer thin, and I'm grateful for Abby and the children to have received some of these messages back from Aaron. Well, Abby authored this book, The Alchemy of Loss. When she authored it and she gave me a copy, I thought to myself, how can I read a book about 9/11? It was so raw. And then I thought to myself, snap out of it, Deborah. How could this woman write a book about this loss and the alchemy of her loss and her interweaving of humor? Yes, humor.
Black humor.
Black, of course, widow humor is so prevalent. And this is a must-read. It's a page-turner. And I invite each of you to get your own copy. It's also, of course, out on Audible. Abby is reading it herself on Audible. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. Yeah, it's really hard. It's a lot harder than it seems.
It does. Yeah, it seems like, oh, you're just going to get in a room and you're going to just feel through it. No.
Yeah, you have to read really slowly. You feel like you're reading like this, you know. At the time, I didn't know that, you know, like eating oatmeal was like making my stomach gurgle like crazy. So I had to sit there with a big, huge pillow on my stomach while I recorded. Just things like that. It was just, I got much better by the end, that she actually made me go back and re-record the first 2 chapters because I just got so much more comfortable with it by the end. So, yeah, but it was an interesting experience. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it was, I mean, just the reading of it and the transformation that Abby has brought to so many other widowed people and non-widowed people has been nothing short of remarkable. And Abby, talk to us about, you obviously had the community of widowed people from 9/11 in the New York metropolitan area, and you bonded some with them, and yet you were spread out. You had these you had these small kids to mother and father now. You're the single parent. And the conversation we were having a little earlier about kids go through stages, and yet this confusion about, is this grief? Is this due to grief? Do I overmother? Do I give them an extra lead rope? Talk to us about some of that tension.
Yeah, it was just really hard. You just never know if they're going through a normal childhood stage, or if this was, like they're losing their minds, they're having a breakdown of some kind, and you just don't know. Is this the fact that they're struggling over homework and having a temper tantrum meltdown about it? Is it because of the homework and it's too hard, or is it really because they just can't quite cope with some aspect of their life, and so it was a lot of really unraveling, and I made a lot of mistakes in terms of, particularly in terms of my daughter, because she was, the school was, insisting she do all this sort of extra learning, and they were taking her out of class, and I didn't really understand at the time the effect that was having on her. Of course we learn all these things later.
After the fact.
They tell you what a crappy job you did. But I was so not connected, and so I didn't really understand what was going on or the implications of what was going on. So, it was really, really messy. It was, very messy. But I have to say, in the end, I'm really proud. Like, I have a very close relationship with my kids now, and they've done really well. My daughter has gone on to become a naturopathic doctor. My son works in cybersecurity and T-Mobile, and it's just they're doing really well overall. And they still suffer. They suffer. Well, again, is this trauma from their childhood, or is this normal? I feel like all kids of their age are suffering on some level with anxiety. So my kids are no different than that. But again, there's things that we're still slowly unraveling. Sometimes, their reaction to something seems really over the top, and then you start to pick it apart and you think, oh, well, hello. It's obvious now, now that we've thought really hard about where that might be coming from, we realize that there are things that certainly have started as a result of the trauma that they went through. So,
and then we chatted. It's maybe a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction, at least on my part, that a woman is widowed, a man is widowed. There were two parents, now there's one parent, and how utterly, gutturally difficult that has to have been. And yet, talk to us about one of the facets that was positive about that. Like you were the main current parent.
Well, yeah, you get to make all the decisions. You don't have to negotiate with anybody else. It's all you. It was sort of both freeing and paralyzing all at the same time, because the options were endless. Do I pick up both my kids and move to Paris? Or, do I buy a house in Seattle? Do I, where do I go? Do I get a job? It was just sort of so that was good. And there's definitely benefits to being a single parent. I think just by nature being a single parent, you do wind up closer to your kids, mostly because you don't have anyone to talk to half the time. So you talk to your kids in a really open way, that, normally with two-parent families, the parents are talking to each other. They're not talking to the kids in the same way. So I think a lot of single parents often feel like they have a closer relationship with their kids than even the two-parent families. So that's certainly a benefit. I don't know otherwise, so it's hard for me to say, to compare what's better, what's worse. But, it was hard being, it wasn't like I was a divorcee parent where the kids go away every other weekend.
Absolutely, there you are.
It was 24/7 on. And that, it was exhausting. And I don't know, honestly. I'm through it now, and I don't know how I did it.
I can second that emotion.
It's like childbirth. You just forget. I don't know. Somehow we got through it.
Yes.
But it was pretty, it was messy.
First of all, if you weren't in the metropolitan area, let me suggest that I'm not sure we did so well as a community. I witnessed people judging widowed people, survivors of the terrorist attacks. If they're lying on their couch crying, they should have been in church. If they were in church, they should have been lying on their couch crying. There was a lot of judgmentalism. I'm fairly confident it wasn't intentional, and yet it was such a new experience, a horrifically new experience, that people were completely thrown, like, I think, out of any realm of common sense. You couldn't make common sense out of it. And so it's that unknown too. It wasn't like Aaron died in a car accident. I mean, people understand that with similar circumstances. This was so...
Well, you know, I think I described in the book that, you know, I became sort of this icon, and people wanted to know me just so that they could say, I know somebody directly affected. That was the phrase. I know somebody directly affected. I was just sort of like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this is weird. You never talked to me before, but here we are, you know.
Yeah.
And that was a little weird. And then there was some weird kind of disconnect in terms of like the firefighter widows and the difference between firefighter widows and non-firefighter widows. And firefighter widows got all this extra money because everybody donated to the firefighter widows. Meanwhile, there were other widows out there who actually, you know, were struggling. And then of course we were the recipients of this fund. So then that you're all such rich widows, what do you need, you know? But, you know, you can have all the money in the world, but if you're not getting, you know, we didn't get any health care, we didn't get, you know, like you had to pay for all of that with that money that maybe we wouldn't have had to pay for, you know, incredibly expensive mental health care that was, you know, it was never covered. It was always, you know, we had... I got cut off of my husband's health insurance. Like, I didn't even know. By September 30th, I had no health insurance, and I didn't know because, you know, I'm so out of it. So it was just, you know, there were costs involved that most families didn't have to reckon with, you know. So, but you know, it was all out here for me. You know, like I was really not paying attention. There were a couple of times where I was in the grocery store and being in the grocery store, and there's like a little thing like donate to the firefighters' widows, and I'm like, oh, I should totally donate. And they go, wait, wait, I'm one of those widows.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You know, it was just a really surreal kind of
that
moment. And then it's surreal every year, you know, because now, even still 23 years later, it's like thinking of you today, and it's lovely on one hand, but on the other hand, I'm like constantly like all day, I'm just like responding like, thanks so much for thinking of me, you know, like, and then it's just, and now there's so many channels, right? It's like emails and, you know, Facebook and Instagram, and it's like, where are they coming from?
Exactly.
Yeah. So you know, just sort of it being so front and center all the time.
And so at some point, you had the children had aged a bit, and you said, "Listen, I'm gonna pop out of this hot spot and go to the West Coast." And you moved to Seattle. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think it came about. It actually came about at a PTA meeting that I went to, and you know, it was a guy they were talking about, you know, security for schools, and you know, he gets up and he's like, you know what they never say about 9/11 was how many people got out of the building, and all these heads turned to me, you know, and I was just like, you know, and just not, and sort of panicking because I didn't know, like, what is the appropriate social response in this moment? Do I run out of the room crying? Do I swear at the guy? Do I sit there like this, which is I think what I did. But it was at that moment that I realized, oh my God, everybody in their school knows who we are. And I don't want my kids growing up in the town where everybody knows them and that this is going to follow them. I need to be more anonymous. And so I had already had hints that I was maybe going to get out of New Jersey, and I had some good friends in Seattle, and my sister lived nearby in Vancouver. So that's what kind of prompted it. And I was, so glad I did, because we really were able to turn over a new leaf. And you know, my kids honestly didn't. My daughter went to the tiniest little girls' school for grades 6, 7, and 8, and nobody in her school knew her dad's history until 8th grade, and she got up and did a little presentation, and everybody was just blown away because they had no idea. And she'd been in this tiny little school all this time, but never said a word. She used to tell people, if we went on vacation or something, and I remember this one time we went to Mexico or something, and she was swimming in the pool, and the little girl like, "Where's your daddy? My daddy's over there," Olivia, like, quick as a whip, just turned, "Oh, he's on a business trip in Florida." Like, where she got this? Like, she's like 8,
Of course. Well, Olivia's really quick. She gets that from Abby, and so is Carter. Yeah, bright kids, and you've done a magnificent job. I have stayed in touch, of course, and flew out a couple of times when we on the anniversary, and attempted to be a distraction, and I love those kids. They're just wonderful. And so you speak about being a professional widow. Talk to us about that.
I think I sort of felt like I became a professional widow just because I became that person, like, somebody dies, I'm the one who gets the phone call, like, so-and-so's husband died, like, will you talk to them? so it was sort of, I became the widow whisperer.
Yeah.
And then I started speaking at Camp Widow.
Yes.
And, I introduced you to Camp Widow, and I did that. I went to the very first Camp Widow.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I went in 2009. I stopped going just around 2019, actually, just before the pandemic, because I just felt like it's a really important healing step to be able to step into the speaker role. And I felt like I had done that for myself, and now I had to move out of the way and allow other speakers to come through from the cohort of widows. And so I was very conscious of just moving out of the way, and also because at this point I was so far away from my widowhood, and it wasn't who I felt. I didn't want the widowhood to continue to find me anymore.
To be the number one advocate,
yeah,
right?
So I joked that I retired as a widow. I'm a retired widow now.
Oh, that's adorable. Yeah. Well, to your point, these twice a year in San Diego and in Tampa, and then later in Toronto, Abby introduced me to Michelle Hernandez, who founded Soaring Spirits International, and one of the services within Soaring Spirits is Camp Widow. And it sounds a little hokey, and yet this is completely an immersive experience for widowed people of any ilk, of any type of relationship that's primary.
Any age.
Mm-hmm. And widows come together, and this is a time and a place where they're in the majority. Just let that sit with you for a minute. Most people find themselves in the majority.
400 widows in one room.
And 400 widows in one room.
Crazy.
And the humor is I actually was just going to say the humor is to die for, but it's not. It is dark, though. It is very dark. And I mean, the wittiness is completely refreshing. And yet this is an opportunity for widows to gather on all kinds of levels. And so I think it was so powerful, Abby, for you to continue to be present for a number of years, like a brand new widow coming in. And we had people coming in that had been widowed like 2 weeks. Yeah. It was that extreme.
Yeah.
And I'm telling you, the sea of love was all-encompassing, and people were bawling, and then they were laughing, and they were learning and bonding.
And the closeness of the relationships and friendships that come out of it are just unbelievable. Yeah. And that's what kept me coming back year after year. It was actually those relationships, because I wanted to go back and see all my friends. It really was like camp in that regard. It's just like, oh, I'm going to go and who's coming this year? Of course, we'd be excited about it. It's like, okay, meet you at the bar for a margarita.
Right. I hope your workworkshop isn't when mine is, because
I want to go. Yeah.
So this is the whole, finding light right after loss. I mean, people deal with loss and widowhood in very different ways, some far less creative than others. And I have to give Abby the Creativity Award in addition to being unflappable. And she has then branched into and become so skilled and adept, not only in writing The Alchemy of Loss. Her second book is Remember the Moon. I highly encourage you reading that. Give us a little snippet about that. We don't have one right here, but you could look it up on Amazon. Go ahead.
Yeah, so it came about as a result of having psychics come to me, like out of the blue and unsolicited, you know. So I thought that it would be really funny. You'll like this story, Deborah, because it involves investing. But I thought it'd be really funny to have a scene where there's a dead husband and his wife has hired a psychic. And so the dead husband's up there going, buy Apple stock, you know, like he's trying to, you know, and the psychic's going, I'm seeing apples, you know, and the wife's going, oh my God, an apple tree. We have an apple tree in our backyard. That's so awesome. It's him, you know, and the husband's up there going, no, you know, totally freaked out. And I just thought that'd be really funny. So
Totally.
basically it's the story of a dead husband, and he's telling the story from the afterlife, where he's basically getting involved with his wife and his child and trying to help them, but inadvertently not helping them at all. And so his trajectory is to go from being superhuman to becoming more spiritual, really is what it's about. And he's having to revisit parts of his life and kind of realize he wasn't the greatest guy in life. And so then he has, you know, the wife sort of winds up in a new relationship, and he has to actually sort of step back a little and realize that this is a good thing and yada yada. But anyway, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but there's a lot of information about the afterworld. I had to create this afterworld for him to live in.
Yes.
And a lot of it came from sessions that I had with a psychic, Lisa Fox.
Lisa Fox.
And I asked her if we could do a session where I got to ask Erin questions, basically. And so I'd sit there on a computer and ask questions like, what the heck do you do all day up there, you know? And so a lot of that material wound up in the book, and that sort of paints his life out in the afterlife.
Yeah. Oh, it's so rich. And Lisa Fox, of course, is superb. And so many widowed folks, especially those that we met at Camp Widow, would experience these messages and interpret these messages and found great comfort, of course, because there's an aspect of loss that's, you know, very permanent, and then the reintroduction of the line of communication, however different, and yet it's palpable. And I've heard a number of these stories, and they just give you chills, as they should, because we are energy, right? We are energy, and we are coalescing in this great, huge sphere, this life and other lives beyond this. Talk to us about, you mentioned and discuss a little bit, an unintentional life.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly what prompted me to coin it, except that I just, you know, I kept sort of being amazed at my life, and it was just sort of like, how the heck did I wind up here? You know, and I, to this moment, stay the same thing. Like, how the heck did I wind up owning a chateau in France? Like, I didn't, you know, like, it wasn't like, you know, 20 years ago, I'm like, I want to own a chateau in life. It was same, like, I didn't, you know, as a child, like, go, I have to write a book. You know, like, it was never my big, you know,
aspiration.
And yet I sit here and go, how the heck did this happen? You know? And so I think that's where it comes from. It's just sort of like my utter awe that I'm living this life where I feel like there's a me that, you know, like that we broke apart on 9/11. And there's this other me living this very conventional life, me and Erin married happily, everything's going along, right? And then there's me now, like where that did happen, and you know, oh yeah, we're gonna move to Seattle, and oh yeah, you're gonna write a book, and oh yeah, you're gonna own a chateau France. It's like, what happened? What broke, you know? Because I always felt like there's a parallel me out there living this life with Erin. It's weird. It's a very common it's a very common sort of widow feeling, I think, but so yeah, that's where it comes from. It's just, you know, just the utter like dumbfoundedness I find myself looking at my life and thinking, I did not set out to have this like kind of extraordinary life. You know?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind Erin has an ear-to-ear grin and probably has for like every single day. Abby has a YouTube channel where she depicts through video and time-lapse photography. It is amazing, called Chateau Debra, bleh, the bird, Chateau Chronicles. And if you're not a subscriber, pop over to YouTube, Chateau Chronicles. She bought the chateau. People from all over the world, and this region especially, are saying, no, that room should be white, right? So talk to us about a few of those comments.
Well, just a few things, like, there's just rules, like, around shutter colors. And at first, when I got here, I was going to paint the blue and then green. And I had all these, like, colors all lined up. And in the end, I just thought, they've always been white. Why am I trying to break things? Why am I trying to, like, go against, the Agen color? Like,
the regions.
Each region kind of has its color for shutters. In this region, it's white. In Provence, it's blue or green. Different regions. So in the end, I just sort of like, all right, we're here. Why am I fighting this so hard? Just like, no, go with the white. It's fine.
But then some people said, no, that would have been the chambers for the servants and so forth, and this would be the kitchen for so and so.
Yeah, we've definitely had to guess. I mean, it's we have caves, right?
Yes.
We have a bakery in a cave. Like, I don't know what it was used for. There's 3 ovens. We think that they were used to dry prunes, which this area is known for. And I joke, I found the perfect place to retire. So
well, that's hysterical. Keep on moving right here.
Yep. So it's kind of anybody's guess. My father's an architect who actually specialized in historical buildings. So, we know that the back end of the building was the old farmhouse, and that they sort of clapped on this facade that came much later. And that, they made it was like a doctor who bought the house and needed to make it more grand. And, I mean, it's not technically a chateau, but there's a lot of domains, I guess you would call them, in France, that if they were at one time, or if they are wine estates, they get called chateaus. So this was a huge wine estate at one time. So that's why it's called Chateau de Bory.
De Bory, D-E, small d, little e, capital B.
B-O-R-I-E, yeah.
Chateau de Bory. So this is now 12 bedrooms?
12 bedrooms, 12 bathrooms.
That's
a lot of beds.
A lot of beds to change. And I said to Abby, you get that renovated and I'm coming over. And she said, Deb, renovate it. Let's do it. And I said, great, we're going to gather women together, mature women, which I specialize in, and have a creating intentional wealth and creativity in the south of France. And we are here doing just that. It has been a blast. Abby set up these local tours. Yesterday we did the Blue Tour. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So we went to the town of Lecture, which is known for Lecture Blue. And in the old, method, they used the woad flower, which is actually a yellow flower. They used the leaves of the woad flower to create a blue dye, kind of much like indigo.
Yeah.
And then there's a little company that's there, and they show you how they do the dyeing. They do it all by hand, how they mix, how they harvest the leaves, how they create the dye, how they nurture the dye. It's almost, it's like a living, it's almost like it's sort of like a sourdough, or it's like making kombucha or something. Like you've got it's a living thing. And then they use that obviously to dye fabrics, and all the fabrics are natural, and it's a really incredible experience. So we went there, and then we visited Lecture, which also has a big, huge brocante, and we did some shopping.
Antiques.
Lots of antiques.
And Abby went, of course, with various volunteers and friends of hers that came over, and of course Olivia, her daughter, and Carter, her son, and they went and chose item by item. And this place's furnishings are so beautiful. So we've been all snapping some pictures, and I've been sharing some, and we'll share some more because it's that beautiful. So the brocantes Of course, we're all over there running around, and no one of us is particularly fluent in French. We're like, Abby, come over. Thomas, who drove our van. And it was a fun experience because we got to see a couple French vendors. They weren't all of them open, in action, and see some of the period pieces of which Abby has completely furnished Chateau de Boré in an astonishingly beautiful way, and so comfortable. So now we want to talk a little bit about your painting, because she is not only an author and sketcher and so forth and so on. I'm going to grab it. I put it in the wrong place. And we have Abby's sketch of the Chateau de Boré. Talk to us.
Yeah, well, it was actually, I was home just between visits, I guess, of being here. And I was already I need to be back, I miss it. So I decided to draw this, this little drawing.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Jeez, it's beautiful. Wow.
Yeah, and it was just came out of being in Seattle and missing the chateau, so I decided to draw it. But yeah, I just kind of I did art. I sort of took up art again, probably after 40 years. I did art a lot in high school and in college, and then I didn't do it. I didn't touch it for 30 some odd years, and then I had a breakup of a relationship. And in Seattle, I own a firehouse, and the my partner had we had a huge apparatus base where the fire engine sat, and he was using it as his workshop, and he actually had an airplane hanging in there. And so when he moved out, I had this huge empty space, and I thought, gosh, what am I going to do to this space? And I thought, this would make a really great art studio. And it has, it has the big door that,
Yes.
the big garage door that opens and the whole bit. So I painted it all white, and it was really funny because at first, I went and bought the student paints, and I had a little tiny easel in this huge space, right? And so little by little, I sort of increased. Yeah, I got more and more and more, and now I started painting 8 by 8, and now I'm painting 6 foot by 6 foot.
I know, big.
Just I get bigger. Get bigger and bigger and bigger with my paintings. So, and I started I just started sort of getting inspiration. I was doing painting classes on YouTube, and just sort of practicing that way. I just sort of started really slow, and just slowly got back into it. And then I found a bigger, I found a community, Art 2, the number 2 Life, on, I found them on YouTube, but they do a whole series, 5 weeks, or no, it must be longer. It must be 3-month series of classes. And so I did that, and then they did an in-person retreat in Mexico, so I went on that. So little by little, I did a little bit more. I did some art with Tracy Verdago as well, and went on a retreat to Bali with her.
Oh, Bali.
Which was really awesome. And so, yeah, so I just, I've just been kind of wiggling my way back into art and trying to figure out, what kind of art do I like doing? I kind of can do a whole bunch of different things. Sometimes I do portraits, and sometimes I do little watercolor sketches, and sometimes I do lots of very colorful abstracts, just sort of, I've even done NFT art.
Oh my gosh, non-fungible token.
I've collected, I because of my ex-partner was a programmer, and so I had this idea, and so he helped me to program it. And so we actually created electronic art just to see what it would be like, It's just super fun.
You see, creativity out of every pore. And how about RGB?
Yeah. Well, she started off as an abstract painting.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
And then I think I was at a gallery, and the gallery said, hey, we're going to do, we're going to do a show all about, I think it was her 100th birthday. And so we're going to do a show. It's all going to be Ruth Bader Ginsburg themed. So I thought, all right. So I just took this painting I'd already done as an abstract, and was like, well, what would happen if I made her face abstract within the abstract? So that's what I wound up doing. So
and
it's really fun.
it's for sale. So
No, it's not. It got bought by a widow.
Oh, I'm grateful. Oh, I think I remember the story. So I want you to go to abigailcarter.com.
Yeah.
And you can see her
there.
art there.
Or Abigail Carter Art on Instagram.
Oh, Instagram, even better. Or perhaps not. Also on Instagram. And Chateau Chronicles on YouTube. And if you're looking to have a retreat in a gorgeous setting,
Or participate in one.
Then certainly be in touch with Abby, and I'd be happy to have you pin us down for the details and all the goodies and the richness of the food. Oh, my heart. So Abby said to me at the beginning, I said, so what do we do for food? Oh, she says, I have my own chef. I was like, ooh, that sounds amazing. And amazing doesn't even begin to describe James.
Yeah.
You really found a gem in James.
I know. I lucked out. We lucked out.
We did. Because where's he going?
He's going to be opening his own restaurant nearby. So I don't think I'm going to have James as my chef for much longer. So
We all feel completely blessed that we got in under not having to pay per entree. And literally, I probably we're all going to take another 5 or so pounds home on our bodies and then work to trim that back. This has been an eating extravaganza, and then the area is so rich with wines. Talk to us about when you came, because you came here and you looked at a number of different towns, and was it even beyond, or did you look in Spain at all, or were you?
I did not. No, it was really just France. And I was looking, I kind of knew I wanted to be in the southwest France, but my idea of southwest actually went pretty far north. So I came back after one of the trips and I had traveled about 1,000 miles back and forth. Yeah, so it's a really interesting area. It's very rural, it's very agricultural. It's really the bread box of France. So it's where, there's incredible fruit and vegetables. They're known in this area for their duck and for their prunes. And so there's a lot of there's quite a gastronomic kind of enclave here because of the freshness and the locality of the food.
Right, and Abby brought us sommelier here, and we all wine tasted and learned so much more than we'd already learned from Abby's description and that of James. He's pairing things that completely match each other, and our palates have been absolutely satiated. Well, maybe not satiated because we're still coming back for more. This opportunity for anyone to enjoy is something that I highly, highly recommend. It's in these moments where we take ourselves out of the routine, take ourselves to a different country. And I'm not a French-speaking person, and I have been so enamored watching the conversation. There's a sense by which I don't need to be in that conversation. It's rich to be on the periphery, right? So take ourselves out of that little jar that some of us have kind of put ourselves in the known, and nothing's really new and exciting, and immerse ourselves in something where there's a whole lot of unknown. I mean, Abby comes over here and teaches herself French, right? Such that, like, when she had some issues with the cliffs and the water springing up where it shouldn't have sprung up, her neighbors came in droves with their big machines, and that, to a single woman's chateau, that speaks highly of Abby and the willingness for her to absolutely get immersed in the language and to know her neighbors. And then we went to a cooking school.
Yeah.
With your neighbor.
I was going to say further to that idea, and the other really big reason that I came to France was, the French have this mentality where the emphasis is on living and not working. So a lot of Americans come to France and they're like, oh, they never work, and they're always on holiday and everything's closed all the time, and there's a reason for that. And the reason is that they live life. They don't even spend time really fixing up their houses the way we do in the United States. They don't really spend a lot of money, but what's important to them is sitting around a table for 2, 3, 4 hours for dinner with good wine, good cheese. They're talking, and you watch, you know, go anywhere in France and sit at a cafe, and they're having intense conversations. They're not on their telephones. They're not living life that way, you know, and that's what was really attractive to me. And that's what I'm trying to do with my retreats, is create this sense of community. It's all about community for me. And that's what we're all missing, I think. We're really missing that hard right now in the United States. We're so divided.
We are.
And so it's to reconnect. And so people of disparate ideas, different cultures, whatever it is, coming together over a good glass of wine or an incredible dessert or whatever it might be, that's the goal for me.
It is gold, and I'm just going to say that you mentioned a sentence ago, you're trying to do this. No, baby, you're doing this.
Yeah.
You're doing this. You have set the stage. You have given the ambiance. You have developed this. You have renovated it. You have fixed. You have otherwise improved this gorgeous structure, and the feeling. I mean, and I had told all the women that signed up for this retreat, which I'm leading.